If you believe you're a king, you're a queen, let me hear you out. I'm a king, I'm a queen. I'm a king. So when I say Africa, I say what? Africa, the richest continent, yet the poorest. When the rich man begins to cry for help in this content, tell me, how can the poor rest? We have traded our birthright for guns, pounds, and dollars. Just look within our rivers, lands, and forests. The unimaginable wealth that lies beneath the dew of our earth's soil. Diamond, gold, cocoa, ivory, and timber, just to name a few, amidst the large basins of oil. So please allow me to ask Africa. Wow. We have enough to feed the rest of the world, including the very hungry mouth in Africa. Yet we subject our own brothers to war, starvation, and massacre. And of all the continents, we are known as the #1 bloodsucker, the backtracker. But we all still remember that once upon a time, we used to be far, far richer. So please allow me to ask Africa. Wow. We provide the rest of the world with the largest amount of minerals. Yet we wallow in poverty with all our religious leaders, economic gurus, and academic generals. And every now and then, see the rest of the world get to attend all our funerals. So please allow me to ask Africa. Wow. How independent is our independence? How free is our freedom? Why have we allowed evil to take residence and allowed corruption to rule our kingdom? Why have we allowed politics and religion to undermine our intelligence? What happened to the ancestral wisdom? Oh, Africa. Wow. We produce cocoa, yet how many of us can afford a chocolate bar? If after all these years we still cannot process our own raw materials, then I'm sorry to say we still do not know who we are. And I find this phenomenon to be too bizarre, reason why I keep asking Africa. Wow. We are quick to blame it all on our colonial masters, when the problem actually is with our psychological monsters. I don't think this has anything to do with our blackness, because forever we will wear our skin, and oh yeah, some of us with so much gladness. So if I be an African till the day I die, then please allow me to ask Africa. Wow. Why can't we break those chains that hold us bound to mental slavery? Why can't we listen to the prophets, Marcus Garvey, Fela Kuti, Robert Nesta Marley, far beyond their musical delivery and political bravery? Why can't we emancipate ourselves from the stories that make us utterly inferior to the present world and throughout all of history? Oh, Africa. Wow. Has our blessing become a curse? Have we inherited our enviable wealth and need to leave us worse? I am still looking forward to the day where we shall once again boast of servant leaders and not just rulers. Men and women who will assume political positions not for their selfish interests, not to fool us. Citizens who will not bow to neo-colonialism, even at the face of guns and bullets. Oh, Africa. Wow. We boast of great leaders such as Kwame Nkrumah, Gamal Abdel Nasser, Nelson Mandela, Haile Selassie, Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, Muammar Gaddafi of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of Nnamdi Azikiwe of Kenneth Kaunda of Patrice Lumumba of Thomas Sankara of Jomo Kenyatta of Modibo Keita of America Cabral of Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde, John Dramani Mahama of Samora Machel of Mozambique, and many others we uphold as great and unique. But do we live by what they preach? Because if it all comes to this, what then is the essence of Kwame Nkrumah's self-governance and advocacy for African unity? Gamal Abdel Nasser's call for Arab unity? Nelson Mandela's fight against the apartheid and its legally discriminating social policy? Haile Selassie's disapproval of chemical weapons and a call for collective security? Julius Nyerere's political philosophy, oh Gaddafi, are we for Gaddafi, and his advocacy for a common African currency? Helen Johnson Sirleaf's extraordinary leadership and upright democracy? If it all comes to this, what then is the essence of Sam Nuyoma's anti-apartheid and anti-colonial activism? Nnamdi Azikiwe's call for nationalism? Sam Nuyoma's anti-apartheid and anti-colonial activism? Kenneth Kaunda's political ideology of African humanism? If it all comes to this, what then is the essence of Patrice Lumumba's fight against imperialism? Thomas Sankara's commitment to women's rights and upright Pan-Africanism? Jomo Kenyatta's fight against colonial rule? Modibo Keita's immense contribution to the OAU, America Cabral and Samora Machel sacrifice made just for me and you? Oh, Africa. Wow. Many prophets have we had, many prophets have we lost. But they still continue to live on in our hearts, because today we still fight the fights they once fought. And with our dear lives, with our freedom, their dear lives, they bought. Please hear me beyond the words that I speak. For it's not the accolades and applause of men that I speak, but that we all wake up to a new Africa. Enough of the sleep. For if you and I be Africans till the day we die, it's only right we join voices in asking, Africa, wow. Oh Africa. Thank you.
Executive of YPLN. He's a director of programs here as well. Please make welcome Divine Poha to introduce our keynote address speaker.
Do we have powerful young men in this room? Yeah. Do we have powerful young women in this room? Yeah. And you are doing this to Ghana. You are doing this to Africa. Me, why? All right. I feel that the room is so quiet. In fact, when you are privileged to have the former president, the former first gentleman of the land in the house, and you still want to be how you were before lunch, then there is a problem. So when I say a luta continua, hey! So when I say a luta continua, you say Victoria Aseta. A luta continua. Oh, a luta continua. You see the young man there? I don't know what I've done to you. A luta continua. Wonderful. I can now feel the spirit. Oh, I can now feel the youth activism spirit. No. All right, thank you very much. It's a privilege and a great honor to come up here with this big book. It means that the person I'm about to introduce is not even of my standard. So I'm really humbled to do that. On a more personal note, JM, as colloquially called, do you understand? He's a born Christian and raised Presbyterian, but now a member of the Assemblies of God Church. Relax. But he belongs to a family made up of Muslims, Christians, and traditionalists. He loves Afrobeat music. And many are still close. Nigeria, are you here? You open the border. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, order. I now have the singular honor to introduce to you the former president of the Republic of Ghana and the flag bearer of the biggest opposition party in Ghana, the National Democratic Congress, the Akatamasonians, the party that won the NFL season. They begin to run into the bush. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you His Excellency John Mahama.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. You may take your seats. Thank you very much. I want to thank you for your kind invitation to join you and interact with you. I wasn't told that I have to make a speech, but for politicians it's an occupational hazard to be called to speak, and so you must be ready at any time to speak. But I noticed something when he was mentioning the different countries. There was one particular guy in the left corner there. Any country they mentioned, he raised his hand and shouted. That's him. That's him. But that is how it should be. Because what are we? We are Africans. So our different nationalities do not really matter. There must be unity in diversity. We have different languages, we have different cultures, we have different foods, but first and foremost, we are Africans. And that is why the issue of integration is so important. When we attained independence, the great Pan-Africanist, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, said that, let us unite now. There were two blocks. I'm sure for those of you who have read history, there was the Monrovia bloc and there was the Casablanca bloc. The Casablanca bloc was for immediate unification, and the Monrovia bloc was for unification at a later date. But Nkrumah warned and said that now that we have got our little countries with our own flags and national anthems, let us unite quickly before we get used to being individual countries, because then it will become more difficult to unite. Unfortunately, they could not reach a consensus on it. And so African integration has taken so long. Eventually, we started with what we call economic communities, different SADC, ECOWAS, and all of them. And ECOWAS is one of the oldest economic communities in the world. It was formed in 1975, before the EU was formed. And yet, if you look at the progress that the EU has done in terms of integration and a common market, and you compare and see that Africa is only now, signing a continental free trade agreement, then you know how far behind we have fallen. But before I come into the meat of what I will talk about, I just talk a bit about myself. I noticed that in the introduction, he mentioned the issue of religion, and said that I was born a Christian, a Presbyterian, and then migrated to the Assemblies of God Church. And of course, the refrain was why. I come from a multi-faith family because my father did not insist on what religion we should adopt. And so, even though he was a Christian, my uncles and many of my aunties are Muslim, and there were some who were just traditional religionists. And so early schooling put me, in the early days, most of the schools were run by the Christian churches. And so normally once you went to school, they give you a Christian name. That's how I got John. And then eventually they would baptize you, and you became a Christian. And so that's how I began. And my father used to attend the Presbyterian church, so I got baptized in the Presbyterian church. And I was a Presbyterian for a long time. And then, until I met a lady called Lodina. When we got married, I used to drop them off at the Assemblies of God Church, and then I go to the Presbyterian church. And so we said, it's the same Christian religion. Why must we, attend different denominations? And so we decided to integrate our church going. And you know the power of women. She and the children won the vote. And so I had to migrate and join the Assemblies of God Church. So that's how come I'm a member of the Assemblies of God. But let me say something. When you're young and you're growing up, you might not be too fixated on a career goal, because I have been many things before in my imagination. For those of you who read my book, My First Coup d'Etat, there's a part where I talk about, wanting to be a game warden. And that was a particular story where in my mother's village, a lion used to come and eat up the goats at night. And eventually, it scared everybody. Everybody had to be indoors by darkness, because you were afraid that you'll be attacked by the lion. And the next day they'll come and it has gone to grab some goat or sheep or something. And so they had to call the game wardens to come and put it down. And in those days, the game wardens had some shiny boots, they had some green uniform, they looked very smart. And so when they killed the lion, we all came out to come and see the dead lion. And the game wardens were standing proudly with their guns and all that. I said, nah, that's what I must be in future. Then again, at one time, I wanted to become a fireman because of their red engine trucks. And how they come, they roll out the hose and shoo. Then I wanted to be a policeman. I wanted to be a bus driver. I can tell you, the professions that I've been, you'll be shocked. But all in my imagination. Eventually, what I became was a historian. I did history for my first degree. And I did it quite by accident. And that is because when we got to sixth form, in the university, they had introduced a new course, which was business administration. Initially, I'd made my mind that I was going to do law. And I was cut out for law because I like reading voraciously. And I was good more in the arts, the history, the geography, economics, and those subjects. Maths, I did enough just to pass, to get my credit. I understood it enough to get my credit. You know, so I didn't have a bent towards, mathematics and things. And so when they were choosing, you see this thing about peer influence. When they were choosing career courses, we got the forms, and, my dad had said I should choose law. And I, in my own heart, wanted to choose law. But I went to school, and I had friends, who were, this new course, business administration, we're going to do business administration, and this and this and that and that. So I said, I should also go and do business administration. Confusion set in. And the mistake of my life, which I never regret, and I believe it was a fortunate mistake, is that I chose business administration as my first choice. And so, second choice, law. Third choice, arts. That year, they were taking aggregate 8. Aggregate 7 for business administration. I got aggregate 8, 1 grade outside business administration. And so business administration passed my form on to law school. That year, law school was taking aggregate 9, and I got aggregate 8. But they said that if you didn't choose law as your first choice, they won't take you, because it shows that you don't have interest in law. You accept it because you didn't get something else. So, they sent my form to arts department. And they went and gave me history. I said, no problem, I'll go study them. So I went into history class. And you see, the thing about history is, it teaches you that this world is millions of years old, and that all of us are just a speck in time that this world has been. And so when you start from that realization, you realize that all the haughtiness and all the arrogance and all the wickedness is not worth anything, because this world has existed long before. It will exist long after you are gone. And so one, it gives you a humbling experience, teaches you about other people, diverse cultures, how man has reached where he got to, from Neanderthal, Australopithecus, and all those, strange forms of men, when we were very direct cousins with monkeys and things, till we've developed to be who we are. And so when you have that kind of breadth of understanding of the world and human beings, then it gives you a certain basis, to be able to understand human nature. So after I finished history, I went and taught for 2 years in my former school, and then I came back and I said, which course can I read now at the postgraduate level? And I decided to go for communication studies. And so I did communication studies, journalism, broadcasting, public relations, and all the other courses associated with journalism. And so that combination of communications and history, I'm grateful to the hall of residence I went to that has shaped who I am. I was a very shy introvert, and I didn't like mixing, apart from my very close friends. They had a band and they sang profane songs and all kinds of things. Village sharp. Who's come out for first choice, don't give it to them. And they'll give it to those who choose it last choice, because it means you don't want to go there. Because, of course, Commonwealth was a quite rowdy hall, and so they were trying to take as many people, who didn't want to go there, because then they wouldn't have chosen it because of what they thought about the hall. But the spirit of vandalism gives you a certain confidence, and it brings you out. If you're an introvert and you go to Commonwealth, by the time you leave, you'll be an extrovert. Sharp, 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 sharp. So Commonwealth had an effect on me, and also is part of what I became eventually as a politician. It gave me the confidence to stand before a gathering like you guys and speak to you. But those are all things to do with growing up. I was in Lagos. I came back the day before yesterday, and I was invited by Real News to give a lecture. And it's covered, mostly to do with some of the themes that you're dealing with here. And it had a strong, bent towards the youth and the future. Africa is a continent that has gone through many, steps, many tribulations. In the early days, we lived as tribal groups, and we went to war with each other from time to time. We had alliances like the different nation states, and it's not different from what it was in Europe. Europe also had their barbaric period where, the Vikings used to attack, take slaves, and kill people, rape women, and all that. Every continent has had its Middle Ages. There was a practice in Europe where they used to catch witches. And so the way sometimes some of our people do now and accuse people of being witches, especially old ladies and things, Europe too had their share of it. They used to accuse old women of witchcraft or women of witchcraft, especially women. I don't know why they do that, why they accuse women, Wizards are more dangerous, And so in those days, they will arrest somebody for witchcraft or wizardry, and the test that you are not a witch or a wizard is that they will throw you into a deep lake, and if you drown, it means you are not a witch. If you are able to come out of the water, you are a witch, you are a wizard, then that one you get a worse punishment. That one will tie you to a stake and set fire under you. So better to drown and just die, and they'll say, oh, they made a mistake, you were not a witch or a wizard. But they all had those kind of barbaric practices. So Africa came through all that. Eventually we became nation states. And before we became nation states, we were colonized, because the Europeans arrived, they were trading with us as equal partners, and they realized that for the kind of industrialization they wanted to do, the kind of trade they were entering into with us would not get them enough raw material to be able to develop it. And so better to share them amongst ourselves and colonize them and be able to get as much of the raw material as we need as possible. And so we're colonized, and the raw materials were shipped out from Ghana: gold, cocoa, timber, rubber, just name it. From Côte d'Ivoire, cocoa, ivory. From Nigeria, granules, cocoa, palm oil, Gambia, granules. All our countries, shipped out raw materials to assist the development of the colonial powers. And this was in the period of the second and third industrial revolution. Well, eventually we got independence. And I believe that so many years after independence, we cannot keep crying and blaming our colonial experience for our backwardness. Yes, it did happen, but we've been in charge of our destinies for enough time to have begun to make a transformational change in our countries. Rather than look back and keep saying, oh, it's a colonialist that did this and that, in our Pan-African days, when we were all young and in university, we were socialists and Pan-Africanists and all that kind of thing. We used to march to free Mandela and all that. And we blame colonialism for where we were at. But I think that it's time for us to take our destinies into our own hands and begin to forge forward in order that we can build a better country for ourselves. We have very talented Africans, but everybody wants the safety of public service or self-employment or something like that. And that's why I like this political network of young people. The point is, you can talk about every segment of the economy. You can talk about creative arts, you can talk about tourism, you can talk about developing agriculture, you can talk about everything. But what is the critical element that will make Africa transform itself? And that element is leadership. And that is why politics is important. We cannot all take the safety of, staying in the financial sector. Oh, who are you? I'm a banker. I'm an artist. I'm this, I'm that, I'm that. You can be all that, but you must be a politician. You must take an interest in the politics of your country. Because leadership is that one ingredient that will bring all these things together to a critical point where it can create a transformation and a better life for you. Just one mistake in politics changes everything for everybody. We build small and medium enterprises. We encourage people to be entrepreneurial. And I'll come and talk about entrepreneurship. Be entrepreneurial. When you leave school, try to do something for yourself and create a business, and you too can employ people. We look at all these guys who have made it and say that, look, you can be like them. And so, yes, we go ahead, we apply ourselves, we build our small businesses, and just let government make a mistake. Inflation goes up, the macroeconomy is disturbed, foreign exchange slips, and the rate of your local currency to foreign exchange changes, and suddenly your business value, 30, 40, 50% is wiped off your business value. Between 2016 and 2019, let me use Ghana as an example. End of December, 4 cedis to the dollar. And so let's say you were running a million Ghana cedi business, assumption, and it was 4 cedis to the dollar. And so you know what your business value is. Today, $5.6 to cedi. And so what is the true value of your business today? Because we still have import-dependent economies. We're not processing enough. We're not adding value. If you say that the colonialists shipped out your raw materials, okay, now the raw materials have been left to you. What value are you adding to them? Up to now, we process only 30% of the cocoa we produce in Ghana. And even the processing, most of the companies that have established processing plants are foreign companies. Ghanaians have an aversion to industry and manufacturing. We like trading, commerce. We and our cousin Nigerians, we like trading because we want to see our money every step of the way. If the money is not in your bank account, it's in your hands in cash. If it's not in cash, it's in goods. If it's not in goods, you've sold and the money is coming back to the bank. But when you set up a factory, sometimes your money disappears. You don't know if it will come out at all. But that is what will transform the country. If we start going into industry, we should not leave industry to the preserve of foreigners, Lebanese, Syrians, and things. One of our colleagues, I was telling him, I said, why don't you build a chocolate factory or cocoa factory? He said, hey, manufacturing, industry. I know the Lebanese foreigners are Indian foreigners, and that's in tree. It means, oh, that one is Lebanese and Indians who do factory. We are traders, we were born traders. But we must break out of that mold. What is going to save this continent is that we expand digital and service industries as quickly as possible, because those are the areas that are going to be able to absorb the millions of young people who are coming out of school every year. Africa is a youthful continent, and it's said that 60% of our population is below 35. And so the single most important challenge facing us is that on one hand, we have a virile and energetic, useful labor force. But on the other hand, if we're not able to provide jobs as fast as we should, then that energetic labor force becomes, idle. That we change the growing inequality in Africa, and that we begin to include everybody, have inclusive growth. And so you hear people say, oh, the fastest growing economy in Africa. It's not about how fast you're growing, it's how inclusive that the future elumelus amongst you, if you explore what your entrepreneurial spirit is. But nobody said don't pursue a career. You can be a doctor, you can be a dentist, you can be whatever. As long as you're contributing to the progress of society, that's a good thing. And so we in leadership will have to up our game in Africa. One, we must grow our economies faster. Because if you have a continent that is expected in population to double by 2050, then there's no time to waste. The pace at which our population is growing, we need to grow our economies at 8% and above to keep pace with the rate of population growth. Because as population grows, you need to invest more in education, provide more schools to be able to accommodate the children and all that. And we need to make sure that all children are going to school. Because an educated family is more likely to be able to look after the children better, have smaller family sizes, and be able to give the children the kind of experience and expertise they need to go into the world of work. And so there's a lot that we could talk about, but you must have self-belief. Believe in yourself. You have what it takes to make yourself somebody who your nation can be proud of, in whatever area you find yourselves. And I find some of our young people who go into music, into the creative arts, into film, I mean, you'll be amazed at the talents that they have. And so if we're able to strive to reach perfection in these areas, then why do we say, oh, politics is dirty, and then we leave it to just the people who, you know, will go into debt to do? So you must also take an interest in the politics. And if you have a bent for it, don't hesitate. You come in, you take punches, but that's what life is about. The more punches you absorb, the more resilient you become to continue to fight and go forward. I've taken my fair share of punches, political punches, very hefty ones. If I was somebody, I would have been knocked out flat by now. And yet, I stand again, and you continue to battle on. As long as you have life and you serve your country and you worship your God, I think that those are the things that are important. But I'll just end by discussing this new issue of climate change. Let's not take it for a joke. Yeah, climate change is real. In the next century or two, if we're not careful, the human being will be what they call an extinct species. You know about the dinosaurs? Yeah, the dinosaurs roamed this world before. They were the dominant species in this world. Today we have to dig to find their bones and study and say, oh, so this kind of animal existed. The rate at which we are plundering this planet, you know, it's possible that human existence could become extinct on the planet. It's a pity. We all went to COP21. We agreed on, you know, measures that all our countries should take. All of us committed to take some actions to reduce the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which is leading to global warming. Unfortunately, there was a change of government in the US, and President Trump doesn't believe in climate change. He says it's a hoax invented by the Chinese in order that they'll use it to overtake America as the leading economy. But it is real. It is affecting our climate already. You find that rainfall in the African sub-region is reducing. Don't mind that sometimes it falls extreme. One day you get about 1 month's rainfall, but if you take collectively the period of rainfall and the frequency of droughts that are beginning to happen, then it means that our continent is under threat. The rate of deforestation is increasing because if you have more population who are using fuel wood to cook, then it means they're cutting down more trees. Farmers cannot predict rainfall, it's erratic. There are bushfires, you know, in many places now. We see the California bushfires, Australia. We see the cyclones in South Africa, Mozambique, and other places. It means that the world, the planet is telling us something, that I've had enough, I can't take anymore. And so in all that you do, you must also bear in mind that you must be advocates for taking urgent measures against climate change, because the world is yours. I don't know how long I'll live, but maybe in the next 30, 40 years, I'm not likely to be here. And you guys are going to be here dealing with all the bushfires and droughts and, things like that. So in whatever you do, in whatever career you take, in whatever pursuit you are involved in, be an advocate for taking the measures and steps that will stop climate change. But I want to encourage all of you and say that the sky is the limit. You can make something of yourselves. You can make a difference wherever you are. In everything that we do, you must be a leader wherever you are. In your community, you must be a leader, show leadership. In your career, in your office, you must show leadership. Because leadership is critical, and leadership is what makes change. And don't be afraid of failure. If you've never failed before, you'll never be successful. You must embrace failure. If it has happened and you've failed, take cognition of it and learn the lessons of that failure so that you don't repeat them in the future. But don't be afraid to fail. If you fail and you fail, eventually you will succeed because you would have learned the lessons of those past failures. So I wish you all the best. I've been to most of your countries. Liberia, I was an international observer in your elections the last time. Sierra Leone, I was there for your last elections. Kenya, I was in Kenya for your election, that election that nobody made, way. It was, losing was not an option. I mean, can you imagine two parties go into an election and nobody has a plan B? We will win, we will win. So what's your plan B? What if you lose? No, we can't lose. An election with two people, none of them can lose. Zimbabwe, I was in Zimbabwe, I was in Malawi, and several other places. But, I mean, in all the places I've gone, all I see is beauty, potential of our people. You see, the young people, they are determined to do something with their lives. And I think that we, as leaders, must work to create the environment so that they're able to realize their full potential. I thank you very much. We're not going to take those old coal-fired plants and come and set them up here just because we'll create jobs. We must look at what areas in terms of the digital economy, we can also look into. But if we have to deal with industry, then we must take it from the point where we have a comparative advantage. And the comparative advantage Africa has is that it's got sunshine, it's got water, it's got arable soils, it's got everything. What we haven't tied down is that we let our poor farmers farm, we give them incentives to produce, but then at the end of it, we don't tie in the agribusiness and the agro-processing end. And so the low-hanging fruits to start with industrialization is to start with agro-industry. Create a situation where you can process those raw foods into goods that can be preserved and well presented on the supermarket shelves so that we can consume them ourselves. Because food processing alone and making sure we're self-sufficient in food products alone will save Ghana $1.5 billion a year. Because if you take 6 products in Ghana, vegetable cooking oil, rice, tomato, poultry, fish, and there's a 6th one. We import $1.5 billion worth of these products every year. And so if we're able to produce and process these products ourselves, you go to the supermarket and there's made in Ghana rice, or let's say because of continental free trade area, we have made in Nigeria rice, at least that money is circulating within our own continent. But yet, can you imagine that all that money, we import about $500 million of rice, is going to Vietnam and Thailand and all of them, to develop their economies. And so, as a start, one, we leapfrog into the fourth industrial revolution. And then two, we look at light industry, value addition, whatever comparative advantage we have, we should add the processing and agribusiness end. And that should be able to create a lot more jobs for us than we currently are doing. Every country that went to the climate change conference, signed on its commitments, that is nationally determined goals, what we will do to ensure that we don't go above the limits, the tipping point in terms of global warming. And Ghana made its commitment. Part of our commitments had to do with reducing the rates of deforestation. Part of our commitment was to improve land use. We have abandoned farmlands, which are still usable, but because of our land tenure system, every year people clear new forests to create more farmland. When if we optimize the use of the current farmland we have, we probably will be able to produce more to feed ourselves than we currently are doing. And so there are many things that we committed to doing. But the greatest threat to West Africa is desertification. The Sahara Desert is the biggest desert in the world. And science has shown that it is creeping southwards at a certain rate every year. And so soon the savannah will become the Sahel. And soon the forest area will become the savannah. All those trees will be gone. And you'll have grassland. And soon that even will turn into desert. And for those of you who've been to Namibia before, are there any Namibians here? It's probably the only place in the world where you land on a desert. You come from the sea and then you go straight into a desert. And so in the past, when the seafarers used to get shipwrecked and they see land ahead, they think that they have reached land and so they'll be safe. And then they go there and suddenly realize that there are no human beings and it's a desert, and they die in the desert. So they should call it the dead man's coast. And we don't want West Africa to become the dead man's coast. And so we need to follow practices that will ensure that we ameliorate climate change in our area. It says government blames the youth, and the youth blame governments. Well, I haven't heard any of our leaders blame our youth yet, and I don't think that they have any basis to blame our young people. It is for our people to blame leadership, and leadership must learn to take accountability and to take responsibility. Often it's when you want to shift responsibility that you blame your youth or your people. I mean, your people are there, you're supposed to motivate them, you have the resources, you must spend it in ways that brings out the best in them. And so if you don't do that, and they complain and criticize, you cannot turn around and blame them for anything. The problem with Ghana is not Ghanaians, is leadership. We must show innovation. We must use our resources in a way that benefits our people more. We must create a system where we're able to optimize the resources that we have. Unfortunately, it isn't the case. You have a situation where we don't share the same national vision. And so each government that comes has its own vision. And I'll just tell you the story of Vision 2020, which was introduced by the Rawlings administration. Just when we were going into the elections, I was in Parliament. And for those of you Ghanaians, you remember the famous J.H. Mensah. J.H. Mensah was the minority leader at the time. We were on the majority benches. I was an MP. And he said, the NDC's Vision 2020 suffers from cataract in one eye and glaucoma in the other. And so as soon as they come, they are not bound by it, they will throw it out the door. And truly, I mean, when the MPP won, they threw Vision 2020 out of the door. Meanwhile, this has been compiled inclusively, opposition, politicians, everybody was consulted before it was done. And so, in my time, we did the 40-year development plan. The same thing, we consulted chiefs, youth, everybody. There were workshops all over. And as soon as the new government came, threw it out, and have now come with Ghana Beyond Aid. You see, so this kind of start and stop development, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, is not taking us anywhere. I mean, projects that the previous government started, a new government comes and it says, look, those projects are not our priority. And so some of them are halfway, taxpayers' money has gone in, and we decide that, look, we're abandoning them. We want to do one district, one faction, want to do one village, one dam. We're not interested in the new 200 senior secondary schools you are building. Those hospital facilities you are building, we're not interested. And so things come to a standstill, and then a new government comes and says, oh, this is your 1B1, and it was a stupid policy, we're not going to follow it. And so we're going back to do this other project. That start and stop, you know, makes us not able to move smoothly. And in that sense, if you look at some of the countries that have a stronger government, and I wouldn't say they are as much liberal democracies as we have, you notice that they move faster. I give an example of Rwanda. You know, there's been a stable government, Kagame has been there for several years. You can see the kind of progress, you know, Rwanda is making, you know, and so sometimes, I remember in the AU we had a question of, should we have development first and democracy later, or democracy first and development later? You know, these are arguments that we still will continue to have, but I still believe that democratic systems can be made to move in an optimized manner if all of us decide that the nation is ours, we want to work together and follow whatever it is. I mean, for me, if I became president again, I'm not going to throw out the projects that this government started. Our taxpayers' money has been put into those policies and those projects. And so we'll continue with them. And we will introduce ours too, in addition to what we're doing, continuing from the previous government. I think that that is how it should be. But certainly no government has the right to blame issue. The youth have done nothing. They are aspiring to, you know, push their full potential. And government must create the right environment for them to be. Do you improve more lives as president or as a private person? Definitely as president. Because policy starts with you. You chair cabinet. Any policy that you put into being will change far more lives than you can do as an individual. And so if I come with a policy and I say, we want a modern health facility in every district of this country, I would change the health status of 30 million people. But I can go and build a small clinic or something and say I'm giving free medical service. It will be in my little community. I have my little farm that I employ people, so I've created jobs in my own little way. But if I am in government and I introduce a youth employment program that brings 100,000 young people and puts them into a program where they are able to do work and get a stipend, but at the same time learn a skill, then it means that you're able to touch more people in office. And that's why being in office at that level is a privilege. It's an honor that you must wear like a badge. It's not everybody who gets a chance to serve at that level of office. And so one, you must be accountable, and two, you must be grateful to your people for having the confidence to put you where you are. And so you go there to serve them, not to lord it over them. Sometimes you listen to the arrogance of public office holders. It's like they're doing Ghanaians a favor. Ghanaians have rather done you a favor to put you where you are. And so one of the things, we must have humility in office. We must be modest in what we do. And it's not everybody who has the opportunity to have hindsight, you know, to be able to correct mistakes that you might have made in the past. So my face will be there on the ballot, together with the many other political parties, and Ghanaians will be free to decide who they think, you know, can lead them in the next 4 years.